In the last 24 hours, the production of the Discover Enterprise over the wellhead produced 11,000 barrels of oil. They continue to increase over the first 3 days of operation. We have gone from 6,000 to 11,000. Trying to increase that production rate, ultimately close the venting valves and move to a greater capacity. BP anticipates moving another craft in that can actually handle additional production. And the combination of these two, the vessel is actually called the Q4000. Combined, will have a production capability of about 20,000 barrels a day. And we're looking to increase production, as I said, so we can slowly close those vents and see how the containment cap is working and whether or not any oil is forced down by the pressure through the rubber seals, as we've talked about before. In the long run, British Petroleum is also looking at bringing larger production vessels in, create a more permanent connection that can be disconnected easily in case we have hurricane or bad weather later on in the hurricane season. And we'll continue to optimize the production out of the well and to contain it. As I've said several occasions, though, the long-term solution to this is going to be drilling the relief wells, which are again targeted at early August. There are 2 relief wells in progress right now. Development Driller 3 is down between 7,000 and 8,000 below the sea floor. Development Driller 2 is down around 3,000. Those will continue. The second one is a risk mitigator as we move towards what will be the final solution, which will be the relief wells. And following the intersection of the well bore with those relief wells, they will put heavy mud down there to suppress the pressure of the oil come up from the reservoir, put a cement plug in, and effectively do what I would call a bottom kill, as opposed to the top kill, which was not successful a couple of weeks ago. What I'd like to kind of talk to you about is the area of operations out there, and we're going to try something on you today, and if you like it, we'll continue to refine it. Take this as a work in progress, but can we go and put the slide up, please? And there are copies available on the web, and we'll get it to you. But basically, we're going to try and start giving you a 3-dimensional look at what the world of work is like out there. And we're dealing with basically 4 areas of operations. One is the subsea area where we're trying to do with containment on the well. The second is trying to deal with the oil that's on the surface above the well, where it comes up in large quantities and can be dealt with effectively through mechanical skimming and in-situ burning. We all know about the recovery on shore, but the emphasis over the last couple of weeks has shifted to the area between the shoreline and out about 50 miles. Because what's happened over the last several weeks, this spill has disaggregated itself. We're no longer dealing with a large monolithic spill. We're dealing with an aggregation of hundreds or thousands of patches of oil that are going a lot of different directions. And we've had to adapt, and we need to adapt to be able to meet that threat. When this operation started, we were controlling all skimming and in-situ burning operations out of the Incident Command Post in Houma, Louisiana, which has responsibility for the area where the well is at. In the last week, we have shifted control of skimming assets to the commander and the Incident Command Post in Alabama, who is responsible for Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, and actually have detached a task force to work for him to push out 50 miles offshore and find these smaller patches and try and deal with them before they get to shore. This is an adaptation to the changing characteristics of the spill, which is no longer a single spill, but a massive collection of smaller spills moving forward. And in regards to that, what is becoming critical in the near future will be able to get skimming capability offshore and be able to work those small patches. We've made some significant progress in bringing more folks into the fight in terms of vessels of opportunity. These are local fishing vessels and workboats that we certify to help us, and then also certify the individuals and train them that are on. Between Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida right now, we have about 1,500 vessel of opportunities where we've certified the crews and put them out there. What we now have is an opportunity to match vessels of opportunity with skimmers. So the next critical component or resource we're going to be looking for is to increase the amount of skimmers now that we have these vessels that can deploy them. We have over 100 large vessels that are skimming offshore in and around the surface area above the well. What we want to do is take this down to a slightly lower level, smaller skimmers and smaller vessels that can work in the harbors and the bays up to 50 miles offshore. And we're moving those assets into place right now. And we'll be looking nationally at our skimmer inventory and try and get those matched up with the vessels of opportunity as we move forward. We continue to move Coast Guard units in as well. We have Coast Guard cutters that have skimming capability stationed off of Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. We have a Coast Guard cutter out there conducting command and control, have helicopters for surveillance, and we have small Coast Guard patrol boats that can actually do scouting, work with the vessels of opportunity to identify the small patches of oil and deal with it there. I would tell you this, though, boom is not a silver bullet against oil. We had a situation over the weekend where we had boom in place and back behind Dolphin Island, Alabama, and the sea state actually defeated the boom, and we had some oil come ashore there and had to deal with that. We'll continue to press forward. I think we have to deal with the reality that no matter how much boom we have out there, the disaggregation of this slick is going to cause oil to come ashore from time to time. The question for us and the challenge for us is get quicker and agile with smaller units can get to back bay shallow areas and work offshore to find smaller patches of oil and deal with them as quickly as we can moving forward. With that, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have for me.
Admiral Allen, what percentage of oil do you think is being captured at this point by the containment device?
Well, let me give you two answers to that, and I think we're going to have to get more fidelity on this as we get with the actual flow rate established. We have two models for flow out of the wellhead that were done by our flow rate technical group under Marcia McNutt of the U.S. Geological Survey. One was a range of 12 to 19,000 barrels a day. The other one was a range of 12 to 25,000 barrels a day. We are now approaching production that will get up around 15,000 barrels a day. I think once we know the production flow and we're able to seal off the vents and then assess the leakage around the seal, we will have a hard, fast number that will tell us where within that range that flow rate lies and allow us to kind of, I would say, narrow the range from the outside and get greater fidelity. Once we do that, then we can actually back that in for the number of days the spill's been ongoing and get a better overall estimate of the overall amount of oil that's been spilled. I call it, it's kind of like an oil budget. How much is coming out, how much do we skim, how much do we burn, and then so we can account for, where all the hydrocarbons went. And that's a work in progress right now. We'll be able to give you a much finer estimate once we establish the flow rate.
And yesterday you talked about the cleanup lasting well into the fall. Can you elaborate on what you meant there? Because you can't expect it all to actually be cleaned up in the fall.
Well, I think we need to be realistic and honest and transparent with the American people. When the relief well is finished and it's capped sometime in August, oil will have flowed to the surface in some manner because we probably won't get 100% containment. We want as much as we can get. So there'll still be oil on the surface the day the well is capped. And the question is, that'll have to be dealt with. And there'll be long-term environmental issues associated with where the oil has come ashore. We're going to have to conduct natural resource damage assessments so we can understand the long-term issues associated with that and what BP should be held accountable for as far as correcting those environmental problems. If you look at all of that, we'll be dealing with oil or the effects of oil well after the time the well is capped.
How long approximately?
Well, it depends on how much oil is up there and again, the direction and the currents and so forth. But I think there needs to be an expectation that we're going to be working at least 4 to 6 weeks after that well is capped on the oil that's just presently overhead. And that doesn't account for what oil might come ashore that will elude us, so we'll have to deal with as far as the impact in the marshes.
Sounds like you're capturing more. Oh, sorry. Mutiny. Great. Okay. You going in the regular order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Being facilitated here.
How would you characterize the containment process so far? Have there been any signs of setbacks or progress? And then on the same thing, can you say how many total miles of coastline have been soiled by oil so far?
Sure. On the containment process, I think it's going fairly well. This is a condition-based process. They increase production once they establish that. They're always concerned about the formation of hydrates. They're putting methanol down. They're also warming the oil as it comes up. All that's kind of being balanced, and I think it's going fairly well. What we want is to establish a rate so we know exactly what that containment cap can tolerate in terms of flow and what's going to be lost. And I think it's very, very important, and we're watching that very, very closely. As far as the coastline, I think we have about 120 miles total linear that's been impacted. But I would say that's kind of deceiving because I was talking with the parish presidents and Governor Jindal. You could have 1 mile impacted linearly, and that could go very deep as far as the acreage of the marshlands behind it. So I think we need to understand where it comes ashore in a marshland, there is a depth component to this, and the effect could be far greater than that. Yes, sir.
You say you're in contact with the White House every day, that you're getting everything you need. There are people down in the Gulf, though, that say there aren't enough skimmers, there aren't enough people on the beaches. Are they just misinformed? And also, you mentioned optimizing production. I understand you want to get as much out of this, but there's an incentive for BP to pull that oil out. Should they have to forfeit that oil and that profit to disincentivize them from keeping that going?
The reason they want to keep the production going is not what they may recoup out of that in terms of production. The reason you want that flow to continue is it alleviates pressure on the wellbore. We did the top kill. We were able to force mud down the wellbore to the point where we actually suppressed all the oil. But the minute they stopped pumping the mud, the oil came back up.